Hey there, and welcome to the HB Show. Today's guest has over 25 years of experience in marketing leadership and has made a significant impact on the global lottery industry, particularly in analytics and insights. Her innovative contributions earned her a spot in the Lottery Industry Hall of Fame in 2023. She holds a Master's of Arts in Mass Communications and a Bachelor's of Science in Advertising from the University of Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next guest of the show, Jennifer Welshons.
You're watching the HB Show.
So you can go ahead and open the.
Oh, you want me to open it now?
Yeah.
Okay. It's so pretty. I love presents.
I hope you like it.
Who doesn't like Veuve? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the backstory behind it?
No.
So the name means widow Clicquot because after becoming a widow at 27 years old, Madame Clicquot took over her husband's struggling champagne business, which was something that was unheard of at the time. I mean, this was the early 1800s, so not many women were leading businesses, unfortunately, at the time. She didn't just run the business, she revolutionized the entire champagne industry. One of her biggest innovations was the riddling table, a technique that removed the yeast from champagne, which means, whenever you make champagne, you take white wine and you mix sugar and yeast, and that makes it champagne and the bubbles that you know today. So when you remove the yeast from the bottle, it turns it from cloudy to clear. And she invented this riddling table that improved that process, created that process.
How amazing is that?
So,
I love that.
So back then they would used to transfer the champagne from bottle to bottle to remove the yeast. But in the process of doing so, they would lose a lot of the bubbles, and the color wasn't as nice. She also invented.
Now I know why I love it.
She also invented the iron cage that sits at the top of champagne bottles.
Oh yeah.
So whenever you're transporting them, you have to turn the wire off and take it off and pop the bottle. So thanks to her leadership, Veuve Clicquot became one of the most sought after champagne brands in the world. And like her, you've carved your own path, you've broken barriers and inspired people along the way.
Oh.
So this isn't just a bottle of champagne, it's a tribute to trailblazing women like you. And I wanted to thank you for being on the HP Show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I wish I was like her, but I appreciate the compliment. That's pretty amazing. But women can do a lot of really, really cool things.
Absolutely.
And more people need to know that story. I'm going to go
it's
telling
really cool.
that all the time now because I give that a lot as gifts. It's the best. It really is. So
it's really
thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So to start off the interview, I wanted to read a quote from an account called Build Alpha on Instagram. And I'll read the quote now. There are only two people whose pride should truly matter to you, not your parents, not your friends, not even your mentors. Just two. The 8-year-old you full of dreams and the 80-year-old you full of memories. Both are watching you now. The child you once were is still inside you, filled with wonder and hope, waiting to see if you'll chase the dreams they once believed in. And then there's the older you, the one who's lived through it all and knows how quickly time passes. They don't care about achievements or what others think. They just want you to slow down, cherish the small moments, love deeply, laugh freely, and embrace the life you have today because those moments won't last forever. If, in this moment, both of them can look at you with pride, if the child sees their hero and the elder sees a life well lived, then you can rest easy. Because in the end, it was never about being perfect. It was about being true to yourself and making the little one proud and giving the older one peace. And if you've done that, then you've already won. I
love, love, love that.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through Instagram one day and I read that quote and I was like, dang, that really hits the heart.
It definitely hits mine. So I'm glad to hear it hit yours. That's really amazing. And yeah, that little child is still in all of us for sure.
Yeah.
It's a matter of finding it.
And it's just
again.
A reminder that I just don't want to get to the end of my life and regret, not taking the chances and not giving it everything my all,
It's that I look at that quote a lot that says, don't live the same year over 75 times and call it a life.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that I've kept in mind that I don't want.
Yeah. It's all about exploring.
Yeah.
So looking at your own career, you started as an analyst and eventually became a chief marketing officer. What was the goal you had in mind when you began, or did your path evolve in ways that you didn't expect as you gained more experience?
For sure. I never had a goal to be a chief marketing officer. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of people that are very, achievement driven, and there is nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of not how I'm wired. I just tend to be naturally curious and always learning. And I think that's really what kind of forged my path. So when I was in college, I really wanted to be in advertising. That's what I thought I was going to do. And I did love advertising and I love the creativity of it. But I actually was leaning more towards the sort of research aspect of it about how do you decide who you're advertising to and how do you decide the strategy of what it's about. So I actually took that path and then went and so the best advice I got was from the professor I was studying under for my master's degree. And he said to me, if this is the path you really want, then you really need to start on the supply side, meaning don't go to a company and start doing this. Go to a supplier who does this for lots of companies so that you get the breadth of experience. You won't get as much depth in each category, but you'll get a lot of breadth and you'll see what you like and don't like. And so that's what I did. And I was at a couple companies and then I was at one that was really interesting because what we were doing was high-end virtual reality type
cool.
research. Yeah. And it was very innovative for its time. It was like the late 90s. And so the only clients that were doing this were, your big CPG kind of companies, and they would use it to develop, let's say a prototype that would cost them millions to develop. In real time, they would do it virtually with us, and then we would test it with whoever the end user was. Or huge shelf sets if you're going to change out your packaging. Build a new retail store, it costs a lot of money to build that. So we would do it virtually for them, supermarkets, all kinds of stuff like that. So it was very interesting. And eventually one of the clients we had was a company called Scientific Games. And Scientific Games is one of the big players in the lottery industry. And they had come looking for how to, best lay out shelf sets, their version of a shelf set, which is the ticket displays. And that happened to be they were my client. So I was working with them. And eventually I'd been doing that supply side for, I think like around 7 years. And I was like, I think it's time for me to flip. I think I want to know the depth side, not just the breadth side. So that's what I did and started as an analyst there as well, because that's kind of where you start in this, in that realm of market insights. And, from there, that natural curiosity, I think, just played into it. Starting out as a researcher, I think, is a really important road in marketing because it is the foundation. You got to kind of know who you're. You definitely have to know who you're serving. The products you're developing and how you're communicating them. It doesn't do any good if you don't know who's on the other end of it. So that was where I started. And I was very lucky to work for most of my career under a leader who recognized that I was somebody who needed to see all the pieces come together. And as they came together, it benefited the company, but it also benefited me because I was taking on more as I saw how it made sense. So, I always had, I was always in the research realm. There's really two legs to that. There's primary research and secondary. Primary would be like surveys and focus groups and when you're out talking to people, getting that firsthand experience. Secondary would be like business intelligence. It's taking existing data and doing something with it. So I kind of started with that. But then I realized, if you want to scale that in any way, you kind of need a marketing operations team. So added that on. And then once I'd added marketing operations, it became like, well, what else kind of fits here? And, ultimately over the years ended up with, all those, but also trade shows and events and communications and proposals. And at one point I had retail development. And so again, it just sort of organically happened that became the chief marketing officer role. And I guess I would say I was kind of just always doing the job. And then eventually it just morphed into whatever was next. So, but very blessed to have a leader early on that fostered that for me. And I think that's something that's really important for anyone in their career, no matter what stage, is making sure you're somewhere where there is somebody valuing what you bring uniquely to the table. And that just happened to be what I uniquely brought, was seeing all these pieces come together.
Really cool that you brought up using VR for that. That early, that was incredible.
It was it was really crazy because for the time it was, yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't like what you know today
Yeah.
as VR. You would look at it and go, wow, that was, but for the time, I mean, it was groundbreaking. And it was, I mean, to render like a whole supermarket or something, I mean, it would take like 4 days
Yeah.
to like render this. But funny stories is I had a lot of customers like, I won't name them, but big soft drink companies here in Atlanta, or um, uh, alcohol distributors. So I'd have to go into like liquor stores and buy like 60 bottles of vodka because you had to like actually photograph them all to put them on the shelf and do whatever. And then I'd have wicked parties afterwards because what am I going to do with 60 bottles of vodka? But it was really a great learning ground for sure.
Yeah. And I know today they're like using a virtual reality to like reorganize their like like bedrooms and stuff with the furniture, and all these different furniture companies are using it for that. It's really cool.
Yeah. It's a great way to visualize when
Can
without
this
having to
fit
do
there?
it. Yeah. Yeah.
What challenges have you faced along the way?
I mean, I think, there's always challenges in everything anybody does. I would say two big ones for me. One's pretty obvious, being a woman. And the second would be kind of the role of marketing, the role that it plays in an organization. So, being a woman, look, we made a lot of progress in the world. We're not there yet, still. I think that I, my role was global. So I would say that it was probably the biggest thing I faced globally, most egregious in the US, but globally, that is still an issue. And it's always a matter of, I could say something and, say it multiple ways and maybe find creative ways to say it or different ways to introduce it. And a male colleague could say it once and then it was, heard. So I think even when companies, organizations are saying that they are empowering women and promoting women, there's still a lot of unconscious bias that happens that isn't always recognized. I wish I could say I had a silver bullet for like, well, how do you overcome that? You don't always. I think the best way I had was really remain authentic to who I was. It was the only thing I could do, and then use that. Go to spaces that actually value that, and a lot of times I was in rooms where they did value that and didn't care, but sometimes you're not. So then remove yourself from those because that's really not where you belong. And then the marketing part. I think a lot of times marketing is confused with sales. People think, oh, it's sales or it's fluffy and it's a nice to have. We don't actually need to do that. I mean, I hear that all the time about cutting marketing departments because we don't need that. Well, marketing is really vast and it's very nuanced. And, the thing I would say is that you have to define it for your organization, define what it is and what it is not. And the what it is not is just as important as the what it is. Because particularly if you're like a chief marketing officer and you're in the C-suite with your colleagues, they have to be really clear on what it is that you're driving towards. And, a chief marketing officer should be held to the same revenue goals as everyone else. A lot of times people think, oh, well, that's not directly tied to revenue. Well, it should be. Not necessarily the actions, because you can't do that, but being part of that team. And so one of the ways that I found to try to do that the best I could was, know your C-suite colleagues and really understand what do they need from your group. What does the CFO need from marketing? What does the chief technology officer need from marketing? And then have tangible deliverables that really show them how your team is aligning with theirs and going to, help the overall mission of the company. But if you don't outline all that, everyone can get out of alignment. And then I think it becomes like, oh, marketing, who cares about marketing? Well, as long as you know what it is, you care.
It's also like just changing, being able to change your perspective, like you said, to be able to view what do they need So
Yeah. And building, oftentimes, this is just my personal experience, back to the marketing operations part of it. I think there are things that those people need that they don't even know they need that marketing can develop for them. Think about, dashboards with views into, I know we'll get into this later, but, my passion is around novel insights. And when you can combine these data sets together that they may not be thinking about, but, the data they look at and the data the marketing looks at, we'll put them together and build a dashboard that gives them insight that they never thought they could have. And that's where the magic really happens. But you have to, again, have alignment of your team to know to do that.
what have been some of your biggest wins?
I mean, I'm sure some people would think the biggest wins are, big contracts and hitting revenue numbers. I mean, of course, that's part of your job, right? But for me personally, my biggest wins are anything with the team that I mean, that's very much sort of my leadership style. Anything we could do, like overcoming an obstacle or finding something new and interesting that we, brought forward. I think one of the biggest wins for me personally was, I mentioned all those different areas that were under me as a chief marketing officer. And, when you first bring things like that together, not everybody sees the benefit. So, the head of business intelligence might be going, why am I sitting in a meeting with the trade show person? Like, this is a waste of my time. I should be doing this, and vice versa. But ultimately, they started to see why there is a benefit to it because, this person's in charge of representing what you do, the products you sell. And by the way, this person knows how they're going to be exhibited. And so you need to listen. And so ultimately it became a really good flow. And I think that's like the biggest win for me is when you can get flow from a team of people that really then are engaged and bringing their best forward to the team, the company, the organization, and themselves. Because if you are working for too long on a team that doesn't have that, you tend to get really burnt out. So those are my wins.
I know some people are often like prone adverse, not prone adverse, but change adverse. Like they don't want to change anything. And how do you go about convincing these people to change or, I guess, just consider other people's perspectives on the team so they can work better?
You can't make anybody do anything. The best way is to show them through example of why it matters. So kind of like what I just said, which is, partner people on something and say, okay, business intelligence guy, you've got all this stuff that you want to show, but that's not going to match up to what is going to actually happen at the show in the fall. Okay. So you two sit together and figure that out. And then when they do that, they realize that, oh, yeah, actually, this feels better. This is flow. It's not that constant, resistance. I also am a big believer in understanding, communication styles, motivations, things like that. So I kind of would know other people on my team how, one person communicates through numbers, another person communicates through visual. They're a visual learner and thinker. And getting everybody to understand that about everybody else is really important. It was important for them to understand me as a leader. I can do tactical very well. It's not where I'm happy. I'm happy as a big picture thinker. And some days they would stare at me like, you need a nap or something because you're just like way up here. But they wouldn't get angry with me because they knew that was how I'm just wired and how I communicate. And ultimately we would make it work. So I think all of that blends together to show people you have an environment of, change. I'm not trying to change things to change them because I decided they should be changed. We all want to feel that flow. We all want to feel good about what we're doing. So let's figure it out. And that requires some change, but not change for the sake of change. That makes me crazy.
Would you say that trickles down to the delivery to the client as well?
Very much so. Very much so. I think they can feel, how your team presents themselves, how they present information and evidence, and particularly in my area, like market intelligence and things, I think it's crucially important that the team members out there working with a client own whatever that story is. I can't mandate that story from the top. If I did, it wouldn't be theirs and it would come off as not authentic. So I think you have to actually trickle that down. And, of course, I'm there as part of it, but it was always important for me that they own whatever that is that they're delivering, because otherwise you can poke holes in that story all day long and you lose credibility.
So lottery is not an industry that you hear a lot about. What can you tell us that we may not know?
Yeah, it's one of the most fascinating studies of consumer behavior ever. It truly is, because I've worked with other consumer packaged goods products, but the relationship of the user, the player in this case, is very different than it is to buying cameras or soft drinks, water, whatever. And so that makes it really interesting. The other thing is, it's an industry that is mired in myths. Like, there's a lot of myths out there. So I'd love to give some perspective, which is, it's a lottery in and of itself. It's a $400 billion global retail sales business. So that's huge. And about 25% of that goes back to good cause funding. So $100 billion. And to put that into some perspective, or some context, one of the greatest philanthropies is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They this year, 2025, they're going to be giving close to $9 billion back to global, projects that they're funding. $9 billion. So when you think of that compared to the $100 billion, now I get it. They're coming at it from different ways, but I really would love for people to know that, for all the myths that there are out there, you don't create a business of that scale on the backs of one kind of demographic. So people of all ages, incomes, ethnicities, all kinds of people play the lottery. In the US, about 3/4 of adult, who's eligible to play have played ever, bought a ticket. So that's pretty broad. And it's done so much. It's an essential part of a state's economy. I would challenge you to find anybody in the state of Georgia, where we are, who isn't affected by Georgia Pre-K or Hope Scholarship. I think you told me you're a Hope Scholar,
Yep.
right? There you go. Great. Prescriptions for elderly people, the environment, whatever it's deemed for in one of the there's 45 U.S. jurisdictions that have lotteries, and then District of Columbia and Puerto Rico also. So you could say 47. Across all those jurisdictions, it's part of the landscape, and retailers rely on it a lot. People don't think about that, but the retailers, it drives traffic into their stores, and the basket ring is higher, all kinds of things. So it's a very fascinating business, and it's one a lot of times not thought about, but there's a lot of good from it, and it's quite interesting for anyone who loves the study of consumers.
I agree. Do the retailers get like money when they sell lottery tickets?
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
it
figured they
varies.
would get an incentive to sell lottery
Yes,
tickets.
it varies by state. Usually around 5%, 5 to
Okay.
6% they
Cool.
get. Yeah,
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's cool to know.
yeah.
How has the lottery industry transformed over the last 25 years, and where do you see it going in the future?
Um, yeah, over the last 25 years, I'd say, there's a few big trends. The first is that there's not as much growth coming from adding new lotteries, sort of that startup mentality. I just told you that there's already, 47 in the US, so you can tell there's not many more startups to go after, which was a big part of the growth curve, but there's still some there. But digital, the introduction of digital, whether that be games, whether that be promotions, loyalty programs, all kinds of areas and aspects of digital are growing very fast. And the influx of competitive gaming, obviously sports betting, iGaming, things like that, are becoming a more real competition that lotteries are having to address. So I'd say those are the biggest things that have happened.
What are your thoughts on whether children are getting exposed to gambling too early? So, for example, I have one here, kind of not the realist example, but Pokemon cards. So when you open up a pack of Pokemon cards, you never know what kind of card you're going to get, and they all have different values. I mean, there are adults that are running to Costco and fighting each other in Costco for boxes of Pokemon
I wish
cards.
somebody would video that. I really want to see that.
Oh,
I'm
it's
going to look.
hilarious.
There's probably videos.
There's
of it.
many videos.
There
It's
probably are.
hilarious.
I need to see that.
It's really unfortunate too. It's like, leave these cards to the kids, you know? But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I really need to see those videos before I can give you my thought. No. I think, this is just my opinion, I think that there are lots of things that children are exposed to that are meant to be only for adults who are mentally capable of making adult decisions. And I think gambling is just one of them. I think, a company like Pokemon, like they are they're a for-profit company. They are positioning their product as fun, collectible, but people are going to use it other ways. They know that profit is king. So, to me, it does come down to you have to have responsible adults in the mix to protect kids from things like that. The company itself is probably not going to do that. I can't say for sure with them. They probably take some measures to make sure that they're not, they're not selling them on playgrounds, things like that. But it is very different with, I'll start with casino gaming. Because casinos know they have some sort of a responsibility to protect. And so in 2000, the Nevada Gaming Commission said, these slot machines are in regulated places where you can't be under 21 to go into, but we need more than that. And so they came up with an amendment called Slots for Tots. And the way it works is it's actually a good thing. It's meaning you can't make slots for tots.
Okay.
It's the anti of that. Gotcha. I don't know why they called it that, but that's what it is. It's called Slots for Tots. And essentially it says any sort of a brand or a theme that is intentionally created for children or for a population under the age of 21 is not allowed on the floor. So don't make any products with that because you're not going to be able to offer them. It's against the law, which is good because it means that there is some protection and there's not as much that would entice any child if they happen to come out there, right? The one exception is nostalgia type things. So, you might be like, well, but I've seen a brand that's like from my childhood that was, well, yeah, once it's past a certain point, then sometimes they will allow it. But like if I use Sesame Street, you're never going to see Sesame Street. It's a nostalgic brand. It was around when I was a kid, but it's intentional for children. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to see it there. But so take that a step further with lotteries. They are like even further against that. I mean, they don't, the only animated type things you're ever going to see are things that are really meant for adults. They're very careful about it. They spend a lot of money making sure their products are developed with the intent of only 21 and up. They spend a lot of time and energy in the buying process, making sure that, it's age regulated. Vending machines, you have to show your ID, put your ID in, age verification. Any of their digital programs has know your customer, KYC checking to make sure people are who they say they are. And they're really, doing as much as possible. There's some that don't even advertise because of that. I mean, they have a lot of advertising restrictions. So I really do feel that, they take their role very seriously about making sure that they are only promoting healthy play, meaning, not just, again, trying not to entice children, trying not to entice anybody that this product isn't meant to have fun. And that really is what they're about. So do I think that kids get exposed to things early? Yeah. I think we can't control for that all the way, but I do think that that gaming industry is trying hard.
Yeah. And talking about the gaming industry, there's one more thing that I want to talk about, and this is not really for kids, but it's one of the biggest games in the world. It's called Counter-Strike 2. And I'm not sure if you're familiar. Have you heard of it before?
A little bit. I did a little
So
research, but
there are these things they called loot boxes in
Right.
the game where they give you loot boxes for free from playing the game. You spend $2.50 to open a case, and it spins and it gives you a random in-game skin. And these skins can be 1 cent all the way up to on the secondary market $1 million. $2 million for a virtual skin. And there's no, from what I've seen, no age regulation to play these games. I mean, I remember playing it when I was 13 years old. So
they're outlawed in some places, though, right? Like in the
I
UK,
think
I
so.
think they've been outlawed already.
China has their own version of the game.
Okay.
But it's linked to a gaming marketplace called Steam, where you can sell the skins on there, but most people sell them third party.
Mm.
But I just wanted to get your thoughts on
Gamification of the games itself.
Yeah.
I mean, just like you said, you were doing it at 13 and you're finding ways to gamify the game itself.
Mhm.
I mean, which my gut happens, now they know it. Now they lean into it, the developers, but they may not have even foreseen that would happen or would take on. And now it's got a life of its,
it's
of
really
its own.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, they make billions of dollars a year. It's kind of insane.
I should look into that more. I've not because again, working in the space where something like that, you're not going to build into the products that a lottery offers. I'll say this, the thing is, you want variety with what you're offering people. I mean, look, there's all different segments of people who play. Some people play for money. Some people just play for fun. Some people play to feel like they're beating the system, like that kind of thing. So, you have to definitely look at things like that and figure out within the confines of your responsible development world, how do you consider that? But knowing that it's something that's already been outlawed in certain countries, I think like it's only going to be those for-profit kind of like commercial companies that are going to really keep innovating in that space, is my gut.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I don't think it should go anywhere, but I think they maybe should have like an age restriction. I mean,
they should, for sure.
It's a game that's meant for adults, but it's just one of those things, like Call of Duty, for example. Like kids play Call of Duty, so
exactly.
What's the difference?
And how do you stop that? And how do you control for it?
It's very difficult.
And this is where I think for where the lottery industry is going, for more regulated type gaming, they do have to really understand what's happening in this space, because young people are growing up with that in mind. And so, and I still think lottery will be relevant always, but the reasons they play will still be the same reasons, but how they play is going to change. And so it is important to understand all that. And why are the loot boxes enticing? Why is it that I want to gamify the system? What do I want from that experience? Because when you understand that, then you can work within your own box, so to speak, and figure out how to deliver that kind of a juice, so to speak, to people, and not have to do it at the expense of a healthy experience.
Exactly. What are some examples of ways consumer insights are used to help lotteries? And I think this carries over well from the discussion we probably just had, but
we've been talking about a lot of them. I think I think knowing their players is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like knowing any of, no matter what kind of industry you're in, knowing your end user is really important. And, I'll give a couple examples would be like, knowing that when a player wins a break-even prize, that means I paid $5 for a scratch-off game. I scratched it there. Oh, I won $5. Give me another ticket. Like when they win that even prize, they typically will reinvest it. That's an important insight for a lottery to know for a lot of reasons. When I, go home and scratch a ticket and I win a free ticket, when I come back in, I'm likely to buy something in the store when I come back for that other visit. That's very important to a retailer to understand that. And how do you, maximize that journey and take out as much friction as you can to make sure that you're, making it the best experience for your consumer. So it's just really insightful all the way around.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Just like it'd be really cool to go in and look at the data, things that you do. It's like what percentage of people take that free ticket and just take $2 and leave, like a $2 ticket, get $2 back, take the $2 and leave, or just get a new ticket. I think some people might not even know that they can even just get the money out of the ticket.
Yeah. Well, for a free ticket, you're not supposed to.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that.
No.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
we didn't
get
say
another
that.
ticket.
It's not a real thing.
But when you're analyzing data, a lot of the data is anonymous. So making sure people understand that just like with any product you're buying, typically you don't know. You're seeing a transaction, but you don't necessarily know who that, I don't know that it was Harrison who is this kind of person or whatever. You can get into loyalty data, that type of stuff. That's a little different. But when you're looking at the massive amounts of just transactions, you're not associating one-to-one with a person. So you're really looking for large patterns. And you can tell, a transaction ended, another transaction started. You can do a lot of inferring, as to what might happen. But that's really what you're working with, is just patterns in huge amounts of data to take educated guesses. And then, like I say, it's when you start partnering that with other pieces of data from the ecosystem, that's what starts getting me really excited.
Yeah. So you never know if it's 100% true until you really go out there and test it. So
that's right. I always said, like, if you're
data.
serious about research, get out from behind your desk.
Yep.
Anyone who's never gone out in the field to anything. I mean, in my, world of testing bottles, I mean, I literally tested a bottle like that in Budapest, on the streets in Budapest. Yes. Virtually. It was virtual design, but we were testing all kinds of them. And until you're standing there with people and watching them interact with it, it's very different than being behind your desk when you start asking a lot of questions. So
yeah, it's really cool. Like, I've been to other countries and have seen bottles in different shapes. Like a sports bottle, for example, I've seen it in the shape of a dumbbell, which is like, what in the world? It's like, it's just like, what gets people to buy that versus a sports drink in that bottle? It's just really interesting data. But
and you know what? A lot of times that may not even have anything to do with the consumer holding it. It might be with the form of distribution. So it's only going to be offered at retailers in a small end cap cooler, and we can only fit them this way. But if we make them this way, we can fit more volume. Like, that's the interesting thing, is you always should know why you should create a product a certain way for the person using it. But then you have to back off that sometimes because the infrastructure won't allow it. And that's a lot of things I've seen in my life, my career.
They're just trying to maximize the space that they have in the stores to make the most profit. Like, I assume that's.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, let's say that, I don't know, cereal companies decided that the best way to offer cereal to a consumer would be in a big round bucket. That's what they want. But the infrastructure of grocery stores can't support that at this point, and it would cost millions of dollars. And so, no, they're getting it in a box.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff. Like,
Interesting.
it's sometimes you have to compromise on that because of all the other infrastructure that's in place that's not going to be changed.
Interesting. What excites you most about data, or working with data, I should say?
Well, you can tell I have passion. I get a little excited about it. I really, really like when you can create novel insights from disparate data. So I've been talking about that a little bit, but if I go back to a lottery example, the National Association of Convenience Stores, they're, that's in the US, the bulk of distribution for lottery games is at convenience stores. And so, they have stats on 95% of people who walk in to buy a lottery ticket, buy something else in their store. And they know that those people are more valuable than someone who doesn't buy lottery. Their basket ring is about 40% more. So when you think of that, how did they get that? They had to combine the data from the lottery terminal with their own data and from the cash register. And then they start looking at the individual products that people are buying and how that ring is higher. And, are they buying their store brands? Oh, I can co-promote with that. Things like that. So to me, that's the most exciting thing. And it really doesn't matter what industry. I'm using lottery as an example, but any industry can do that, where you combine, something about the product being sold with operational aspects. That's where I've just seen things open up a lot, and you can really change your business when you start looking at things differently that way.
One of the things when I was working at Best Buy, for example, they always told us we had like a bundling percentage. So it's
Yes.
what else can you sell with the main product? So if you're selling a computer, hey, do you need a keyboard? Do you need a mouse? Do you need a headset? Do you need a flash drive? Do you
Yes.
need a mouse pad? Like the whole 9 yards, really go through and ask the client, what do you need to make them happy at the end of the day? And
Yes. And a thing that a lot of people mistake with bundling is they'll look at data and say, okay, well, 80% of people buying a computer buy a keyboard.
Mhm.
Well, then don't bundle those together, because they're already going to buy that, right? But you upsell that keyboard. You go, well, yeah, they were going to buy this one, but let's get them to buy this one and explain why it's better, because then it's already a sale that is probably an easy sell, because you already knew they'd probably buy a keyboard. But don't offer a promo price on that. Offer it on something where you're getting an incremental. And yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of, to me, again, back to authenticity. I don't want to sell people things they don't need.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if they, it's the big thing with recommendation engines now. How many times have you been on Amazon and you're buying what you want, and then it says, oh, but you might need this. And you're like, oh, I do need that. How did they know? Well, sure, they might be selling you something you don't need, but they really are building it off of you and what you like.
Yeah.
I personally am a fan of that. I know a lot of people aren't. They don't want to be sold to, but I'm tired of making decisions. I'd just rather them kind of tell me, and then I'll decide.
Well, at the end of the day, you're the one who clicks the button.
Exactly.
It's your responsibility to make sure you don't buy the wrong things.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, they can't regulate me. So
yeah. Exactly.
regulate myself.
All right, let's talk about AI, since machine learning is a subset of traditional AI. Will you explain the difference between traditional and generative AI for those who aren't aware?
So traditional AI is using data in a more structured way. So for like predictive analytics or automation, like an analytics team would typically be using that in the business intelligence space. And it's been around a lot longer. Hence, machine learning is under the umbrella of AI. Generative AI is, kind of the hot new thing that everybody's talking about, and it's more. It takes large data sets. It uses like a language learning model, and it can take really unstructured data and come up with more creative and new stuff. So particularly good with writing, or taking large amounts of if you're writing a proposal, it can take previous ones and then pull out information and help that way. So more for content.
Would you say like generative AI is used more so by like the average person today than like just traditional AI, for example?
Yes, because I think you have to have a little more data slant to you to use the traditional, and the generative is meant to be easier for people to use. But what I would say is you still have to, even with generative, I mean, it's going to be, obviously it's changing the world. You still have to know the right things to ask. It's garbage in, garbage out. So you still have to, have smart people on the other side asking the right questions to get out of it something meaningful.
Yeah, and I've had coworkers like say please and thank you to it just in case it ever comes to attack us one day. They're treating
funny.
it really nice. It's
That's
like
good. That's good.
overlord.
Yeah. No, that's
it's really funny. But how can generative AI help marketing teams succeed?
There's a lot of ways. I think the biggest impact it can make right away for a team is finding bottlenecks in your marketing process and applying it there. So where do you have, it can help with resource constraints. Let's say you do have a communications team or something and you're down a writer. Well, you can use that to kind of fill that gap. Again, it has to be checked. You can't just throw, whatever it writes out there, but it can certainly help there. It can help with automating some processes that, again, maybe are taking you a long time, taking your team a long time. It can help with resource gaps where you may be lacking an employee to help do some certain type of task. It can also help with upskilling your employees. So let's say you do have, a writer who's decent, but maybe not as good as you'd like them to be. That's where it can, really help you with training and upskilling their talent if you don't have the time to be training them. So you can have them work that way, and then you come in and, check the work. And I do think that's a really important part. Like I said, AI is is it going to take away people's jobs? Sure. But mostly the people that allow it to take away their job. If you're still a smart, strategic thinker, using AI to enhance what is uniquely you, that's what you should be doing. That's great. Everybody has to keep learning more about it and keeping up with their own skill set because it's not going anywhere. So just be really conscious of how it can help you in your role. And for sure, for a marketing team, it's going to be game changing, particularly with automation and operationalizing things that can take a lot of time.
Are there any drawbacks to AI, generative AI, using it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the biggest drawback I see, well, if you're a chief marketing officer, you're going to have to really keep on top of it. You're not a scientist, but you have to know how it will benefit your organization and where. And the drawbacks will be if you're not on top of that. So if you're not on top of it, you could lose the control that needs to be in place in an organization around compliance. What rules are you setting for how it can be used, when it can be used, who has access to the information, all of that. People are scrambling to make policies around that right now because everybody can be using it at their desk and there's not a lot of rules yet. So I think that's going to be the drawback if people don't keep up on it, and create guidelines for their company.
Yeah, and I've seen people, companies struggle with adopting it as well. So for example, there's a sports card company that uses generative AI for their sports cards, but they'll have a picture of the football field and the lines will be all messed up and not accurate to a normal football field. And I think there's just some checks and balances that need to be taking place there to make sure that the quality isn't being sacrificed by using it.
Yes. I mean, it's it's still, I won't say it's an infancy stage. I think it's beyond infancy stage, but it's going to do amazing things, but
Absolutely.
like anything, people can misuse it.
Mm.
And when they misuse it, then, it kind of gives it a bad name. But I see, in healthcare and in education, I think it's going to really advance those areas much faster than we would have gotten there without it.
Hope so.
I hope so too. I really do.
In 2023, you were inducted into the Lottery Industry Hall of Fame. What does this mean to you personally and professionally?
It's a great honor, honestly, to be recognized for the work in analytics and insights, which is, my huge passion, and it's a group of only around 100 people, and to be recognized by colleagues and peers and competitors and customers, it was a truly humbling experience, and I feel very blessed to be a part of it.
Last year, you decided to leave your career in the lottery industry. Why?
I did. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Clearly, throughout this interview, you can tell I have a lot of passion for that industry and that the mission, and it will always be part of me. And I'm very proud of the work that I was able to do there. Um, but at some point, sometimes the universe gives you these signs and says, hey, maybe there's more out there for you. I mean, I was there, you know, over 2 decades. And I started to realize that the fear of leaving and going to try something new, whatever that something is, um, felt like something I could live with better than the fear that I would have been giving into to stay and not try something new, if that makes sense. So, things change, and I just there was an opportunity um, to leave to go pursue whatever else I might want to pursue, and so I took it, and it's been quite a journey, but I'll always be very, very grateful for everything that I learned along the way.
I mean, you always want to kind of prove yourself in other life paths as well. Like you don't want to
Yeah,
just say, go through your entire life and say, I proved myself here, but like I want to say, I proved myself in other ways as well. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, and again, it's about um, everything is based in fear, right? Everything's
yeah.
fear based, and I really had to sit with that for a while because it's scary to just walk away from something that you've done for that long and then go, oh God, could I do it somewhere else? Or do I want to do it somewhere else? Or how might that look? And um, I had a moment just a few months ago where I was thinking of a project that I'm doing something on, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, how am I going to get through this? Whatever. And then I paused and I was like, Jennifer, that's exactly why you left, to feel this way. So don't ignore it.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel uncertain and unsure, but this is why you left. If you didn't want to feel that, you would have just stayed where you were. So it's learning to embrace things like that.
Yeah.
It- yeah. So,
I know you have a lot of passions around a lot of areas. What's next for you?
well, when I left my role, um, after a couple months of kind of just decompressing, I I what I still didn't know the path I wanted, but what I did know is whatever path it is, I wanted it to really align with me, my values. This next chapter is for me, right? And I need to make it about that. So, um, I went and found an executive coach, and I cannot tell you the gift it is to give yourself to work with a coach. There's all kinds of coaches, life coaches, executive coaches, other types of mentors. That's all personal choice and you know financial choice and whatever. But for me, working with this executive coach has been really instrumental in trying to help me see that the path is only going to be illuminated while I'm on it. So it's not like it's like, oh yeah, this is how I'm
Yeah.
going. But the thing that it's done for me is really defined what my values are. My top are authenticity, generosity, and freedom. Um, so everything I'm looking at doing is through that lens. Authenticity being, do I go to another organization where I feel I can be best used, but do they really align to that? Maybe looking at startups, something like that. The generosity part is about a generosity of spirit and talent and mentoring. And, obviously I talked a lot about that, building teams is really important to me. I love mentoring. When I was in the lottery industry, I was part of, it's called it's Women in Lottery Leadership. It's a great organization for mentoring young women into higher roles. I've also done work with Alpharetta Tech, who has a great program for young high school girls who are in the area of STEM and trying to become engineers and things like that. That great organization. So volunteering time doing that. And then freedom. Freedom was a thing that, is kind of hard to find, and it's whatever the definition is for you. For me, it's about taking whatever opportunity is coming my way down a path. And so I started my own LLC. It's called Ingenuity.co, where I'm probably going to use some of my talents to, help other people. I'm helping other friends who are starting their business do some stuff. And I'm writing a children's book.
Oh, cool.
That's a passion I've always had, the creative side, back to my 8-year-old self.
Yeah.
80-year-old Jen would be really mad if 8-year-old Jen didn't come out at some point and do this. So doesn't matter if I sell copies or not. That's not what it's about. It's about fulfilling that for me. So I am exploring lots of different passions, and it feels a little uncertain and crazy, but at the same time, I know I'm in the place that I'm supposed to be, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's
where it
awesome.
takes me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, like you talked about the uncertainty and not being able to see, the final destination, but being okay with just being on that path. And I'll tell you that taking one step down that path is a lot closer to your goal than just staying at the beginning and being afraid of not starting. So
yeah, it's a day by day thing. There's, I'm definitely not saying to people, oh yeah, this is easy, go do it, go do it. You have to decide your own journey.
Yep.
But it's definitely, I think the universe is trying to tell me this is what I need to learn, which is be okay with uncertainty. You have no evidence to say that you're not going to succeed at something. You just don't know what that is yet. So keep trying.
Yep. It really forces you to like pull from within when you're just in these random parts. You got to
know yourself really well. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for young professionals today to close out?
Yeah, I would. Well, this is something that anyone who's ever worked with me kind of knows. This is sort of my the thing I say to everybody, which is only do what only you can do. And it is something that I wished I had learned earlier in my career. So I do think it's really important for young professionals, because I think if you only do, and I don't mean it to be like restrictive, like don't be the person saying, well, that's not my job or whatever. You have to do a lot of things in order to grow and learn and see, but really start sorting out your unique value. And when you are in a place where you feel like you're doing a lot of stuff that anybody could do, and you're not feeling fulfilled because you're like, I think I'm actually really good at this. This is what brings me joy. So even if 20% of my job is that, it at least needs to be. And when you start feeling that that isn't there, you should really take a step back and look at, where you are. Can the organizations that you're in support you? Because if not, you should go where you can only do what only you can do. And it really struck me. I was meeting with the illustrator for my children's book, is a very talented young woman. And she said to me, I don't know any women like you. I'm like, well, what does that mean? But she really meant it as a nice compliment, being that, somebody who had a very successful career, but walked away to reinvent themselves because that's the me I could live with every day. And I think, for her, it's an interesting perspective to see people do that, because a lot of times you don't, you stay in something too long. And I think every young person should understand that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And if you're really feeling out of alignment with yourself, take a look at that, because it'll catch up with you if you don't. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic advice. And thank you for being on the HB show. I
Thank
really
you for
appreciate it.
having me, and thank you for doing what only you can do. I think you're being very unique in trying to explore a passion that you have, and I admire you for that. That's really awesome and speaks wonders to who you are too. So thank you
so
and
much.
good luck with this.
Thank you.